On this Friday night, Canada stands its ground. How Ottawa intends to retaliate against our closest ally after President Trump reimposes tariffs on Canadian aluminum.
We will not escalate, and we will not back down.
Jobs in Canada picking up, a new snapshot tonight that's positive, but not back to pre-pandemic levels. What's just happened to Canada's last fully intact ice shelf as the Arctic heats up?
It's now on the order of 5-10 degrees or more.
And fears a huge glacier in the Italian Alps could collapse at any moment. Plus, play of the day, a bag-snatching boar versus a man who left nothing to the imagination.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Canada's Deputy Prime Minister says this country will not back down after being dragged into a trade dispute, accused by the U.S. president of taking advantage of Americans. Chrystia Freeland promised swift retaliation today after Donald Trump announced plans to reimpose a 10% tariff on Canadian aluminum. Trump justified the move by saying Canadian aluminum imports pose a threat to America's national security. Freeland today called that ludicrous. She says the tariff is unnecessary, unwarranted, and entirely unacceptable.
In imposing these tariffs, the United States has taken the absurd decision to harm its own people at a time when its economy is suffering the deepest crisis since the Great Depression.
Freeland intends to impose dollar-for-dollar countermeasures. In our top story tonight, Michael Couture looks at why Trump is picking this fight now and how Canada is fighting back.
Canada will respond swiftly and strongly.
Canada and the United States are back at it, renewing a tariff tit-for-tat over aluminum. CUSMA, or the new NAFTA deal, came into effect a month ago and was supposed to be a step towards trade peace with our largest trading partner. Instead, Canada is making a list of American products to hit back.
The final tariffs that we impose will be, as I said, perfectly reciprocal, dollar for dollar, and the total amount will be $3.6 billion.
But those tariffs must be on things containing aluminum. That's part of our new trade agreement. We can't copy the 2018 playbook when Canada targeted products from Republican states like Kentucky bourbon.
So when you look at our options there, what are we going to do? Put a tariff on bottle caps?
The government already has a broad list it wants to narrow down, which includes home appliances, golf clubs, and wheel rims. And it's looking to Canadians to submit feedback for the final list.
We're supposed to be, part of the big family, and he comes and backstabs us like this.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford supports slapping tariffs on American products, but he's got his own protectionist plan.
We're Team Canada. Get out there and buy Ontario-made products. We will kick their butts all over the place. $17 billion.
The provinces are important in this fight, especially Quebec, home to 9 aluminum smelters. Provincial officials there are already reaching out to their cross-border counterparts.
They like to buy the Quebec green aluminum, and actually, when I spoke to 3 states, the governor or Secretary of State, I think they all support it.
But the key is trying to convince President Trump, who's looking for a win in the so-called Rust Belt as the U.S. election looms.
He's grasping for something, I think, to try to get this connection with blue-collar voters in particular areas, and unfortunately, he's making it worse.
And now Canada has to once again perform the delicate dance of pushing back against the U.S. president without escalating the fight. Donna?
Michael Couture in Ottawa, thanks. There is some promising news tonight about Canada's labour market. Jobs lost at the start of the pandemic appear to be slowly coming back and at a higher rate than economists had predicted. There's still a long way to go, though, to a full recovery. Canada added 419,000 new jobs in July. That pushed the unemployment rate down to 10.9%. For the first time, Statistics Canada collected unemployment data according to race. As Eric Sorensen explains, it provides a fuller picture of who is hardest hit by the changes in the job market.
From empty streets and an economic standstill in the spring to bustling cafes and a reawakened economy this summer, the Pint Sports Bar reopened, bringing back more than 20 employees. But it's still down for more than 100 workers because tourism has not bounced back and many weekday customers are still working from home.
This is the problem that a lot of us are facing, right? It doesn't truly matter how much space you have to trade in if there are no guests to serve.
In an economy still struggling, most jobs added were part-time. Women and visible minorities have felt the brunt, and more than 1 million full-time jobs have not come back.
But the labor market is still very weak. The point of fact is that you still have 1.3 million workers that lost their job during the downturn that weren't replaced when the reopening occurred.
The vast majority of jobs lost in 2020 have been a result of the pandemic, and you can see the pattern. The number of cases of COVID-19 climbed from February to March, and they began spiking in April and May to well over 1,000 cases per day before falling off in June and July. It is from that virus that came the economic flu. The number of unemployed started in February around 1 million, climbed to 1.5 million in March, and then peaked at well over 2.5 million in April into May. And then it began to drop in June. By July, more than 400,000 fewer Canadians were out of work than there were in May. The worry is that when schools reopen and winter flu season arrives, a second wave of COVID-19 could hit, and so could a second wave of unemployment.
Public health, education, and economics are all intimately intertwined. Job statistics and income in general is hinging on our ability to address public health emergencies, and all that is confounded by the ability to open schools. So education comes into this as well.
Epidemiologists and economists alike are watching the same public health data.
The virus is still in circulation, and I think this is going to temper the pace of economic recovery.
Bottom line for Canadians, job numbers may slowly continue to go up if we keep the number of COVID-19 cases down. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
In the U.S., the economy is on a roller coaster ride. The U.S. gained 1.8 million jobs in July as public health restrictions were reintroduced in some places, closing businesses for a second time. It's a lot fewer than the 4.8 million jobs that were added in June. Tens of millions of Americans are still out of work, and lawmakers can't agree on an economic relief stimulus bill, as Jennifer Johnson reports.
America's unemployment rate is still over 10% as the COVID-19 pandemic keeps tightening its grip on the economy. The U.S. Labor Department reports job gains in July were less than half the gains reported in June. A deceleration some economists feared.
It's a slowdown, and that slowdown is completely related to the surge in virus in the South and West, as a lot of municipalities started to slow down the reopening process.
Millions of out-of-work Americans are in desperate need of more economic help, but the two sides in Congress are still wide apart on any long-term plan. The Republicans have proposed a $1 trillion relief package. The Democrats' plan is over $3 trillion, but they say they're willing to compromise.
If we could do that, if we take down $1 trillion and they add $1 trillion, we'll be within range.
Pandemic unemployment benefits have run out for more than 30 million Americans. The Paycheck Protection Program to help small businesses pay employees expires Saturday, and an eviction moratorium expired last week.
Let's say if I can't pay my rent, they're going to kick me out, right? And I just don't want to live on the street.
Democrats want the unemployed to continue to get an additional $600 a week. Republicans want to trim that amount. Late Friday, no deal was reached. The White House says President Trump is ready to sign executive orders to give Americans some relief.
And we agree with the Speaker. This is not the first choice, but people have run out of the enhanced unemployment, so that is something we will recommend an executive order on. And it relates to rental foreclosures. We will recommend a executive order on that, and also student loans.
Both sides agree tens of millions of Americans are hurting, with bills mounting, rent and mortgages due, and COVID-19 forcing businesses across the country to stay closed. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
TikTok is threatening legal action against the U.S. after President Trump said he intends to ban American companies from doing business with the Chinese app. The U.S. president issued executive orders to ban U.S. transactions with TikTok and with the social media platform WeChat. It's supposed to happen in 45 days. The Trump administration says it's stepping up efforts to purge what it calls untrusted Chinese apps from U.S. networks. In a statement, TikTok says, "We will pursue all remedies available to us in order to ensure that the rule of law is not discarded." Microsoft has confirmed it's interested in buying part of the TikTok platform that operates outside China. Another Canadian, the second in 2 days, has been sentenced to death in China. Yi Zhenwei has been found guilty of manufacturing and transporting illegal drugs. This is how Canada's Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland reacted to the death sentence.
We oppose it clearly and always everywhere around the world. We believe it is a cruel and inhumane punishment, and we make that clear to all of our interlocutors everywhere. We have made that clear in our conversations with China, and we will continue to do so.
4 Canadian citizens are now on death row in China, and 2 others being held on espionage charges face lengthy prison terms if they are convicted. We're learning more tonight about the man who, in a lawsuit, alleges the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia sent a hit squad to Canada to kill him. Saad al-Jabri is a former top Saudi intelligence chief who now lives in exile in Canada. For years, he was a key player in Saudi Arabia's national security and had close relationships with the so-called Five Eyes intelligence agencies. He was also the right-hand man to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Nayef. But in 2017, bin Nayef's rival, Mohammed bin Salman, took over running the country, and al-Jabri fled to Turkey, then to Toronto, where he now lives. In a civil suit filed in the U.S., al-Jabri accuses bin Salman of sending a hit squad to Canada in 2018 to kill him. Former Canadian ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Dennis Horak, calls it an extraordinary allegation.
The allegations are certainly disturbing, and it's something I think that the government would look into and reach out to the Saudis and find out what their perspective on this is. Obviously, they'll deny it, and again, these allegations still need to be proven in court. But certainly, I think it's something that should be concerning for Canadians that this could have happened on Canadian soil.
Canada's Public Safety Minister Bill Blair won't comment directly on the allegations made in the lawsuit, but he does say Ottawa will not tolerate foreign actors threatening anyone in Canada. The Saudi government has not formally commented on al-Jabri either, but has tried unsuccessfully to have him extradited on corruption charges through Interpol. At least 16 people are dead after an Air India Express plane skidded off the runway as it landed and split in half. This video from the tarmac shows the front of the fuselage of the Boeing 737 sheared off. The plane was arriving from Dubai, bringing home people who'd been stranded abroad because of the pandemic. According to local media reports, it was trying to land in heavy rain when it overshot the runway and crashed nose first down a slope. 190 people were on board, including 10 infants, and among the 16 dead are the pilot and co-pilot. There are troubling new allegations tonight about that deadly port explosion in Beirut. Sources have told the Guardian newspaper that prior to the blast, dozens of bags of fireworks were being stored in the same warehouse as that stockpile of ammonium nitrate, which acts as an accelerant in a fire. In video from the day of the blast, you can see white flashes, what appear to be fireworks, going off before the massive explosion. A former port worker told the Guardian newspaper he warned for years it was a disaster waiting to happen and says nothing was done. More than 150 people are now confirmed to have died, and there's a growing consensus in Beirut that government negligence is to blame. Lebanon's president says the cause is still unknown, and as Crystal Gamansing reports, he's hinting, without providing any evidence, of something more nefarious than negligence.
Scorched and twisted metal as far as the eye can see. This is what international search crews are facing. Questions about the cause of the devastation and destruction taking a new turn. The Lebanese president is now adding the possibility of a missile or bomb, asking France for satellite help to determine if there were warplanes in the air at the time. Michel Aoun says the cause has not yet been determined and that the international community doesn't need to get involved. Emotions are raw in Beirut. There have been small but violent clashes between citizens and government security forces. Many say the explosion is just the latest example of years of mismanagement and neglect. The blast involved more than 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate stored at the port. Boris Prokoshev was the captain of the ship that brought that load into Beirut during an unscheduled stop. He says the government knew it was dangerous. I cannot understand the fact that the cargo has been stored there for such a long time, he says. He questions why it wasn't moved and at least used to fertilize some fields. There are grave concerns about food security and shelter. Aid distribution is now in full swing.
With large swathes of Beirut unfit to live in, the country's principal port all but destroyed, and the health system on its knees, the situation is really dire.
It is so dire that even support agencies such as the World Food Program and UNICEF are having to salvage supplies and take stock of what's needed. International search crews are at the site combing through the debris, with time running out to find any survivors. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
Standing by his back-to-school plan, coming up, Ontario's Premier takes on concerns about class size. With September approaching, anxiety is building about what happens when schools reopen. Among the concerns is class size. In Ontario, more than 100,000 people have now signed a petition calling for smaller classes. The government plans to keep elementary school class sizes at pre-pandemic levels. And today, Ontario's Premier was asked repeatedly if his government is open to the idea of reducing class sizes. This is what he said.
We're giving the boards $30 million to hire new staff. More staff equals smaller classrooms. We're flexible. We have to be flexible. We have to be adaptable. And my number one concern is to protect the children and make sure the parents feel comfortable. And we do have the best plan. We have the best plan, bar none, across the country.
Premier Ford admits keeping all kids in class at least 2 meters apart won't always be possible. In Manitoba, the province's second largest city is dealing with an outbreak of COVID-19. Manitoba's chief public health officer announced 17 new cases today, and he confirmed 8 involved workers at a Brandon business. He didn't name the company, but the United Food and Commercial Workers Union has confirmed 8 workers at the city's Maple Leaf pork processing plant have tested positive for COVID-19. It's believed they contracted the virus outside of work. Still ahead, how Canada's last intact ice shelf has changed forever. Fears are rising in Italy as a heat wave takes its toll on a glacier in the Italian Alps. Dozens of people near the popular tourist destination of Mont Blanc have been told to leave because it's feared the 500,000 square meters of ice could collapse and threaten homes nearby. Experts say the potential for collapse was first discovered in April, and rising temperatures and another recent fracture have greatly increased the risk. Canada's last fully intact ice shelf has also become a casualty of climate change. The Milne ice shelf is about as far north as you can get. It collapsed into the sea last week, losing nearly half of its total area. As Heather Urix West explains, researchers say its demise should be a wake-up call.
It's a beautiful but remote part of Canada's Arctic that an Ottawa research team has been studying closely for years. This year's trip was cancelled because of the pandemic, and there won't be another chance to go back.
I enjoy going there every summer, and to get news that this piece is broken off and my study site has changed completely was certainly a bit of a shock.
The Milne ice shelf is at the northern tip of Nunavut's Ellesmere Island. Over 2 days in late July, 40% of the ice shelf collapsed, shrinking by about 80 square kilometers, an area 2/3 the size of Vancouver.
These are huge areas of ice that you spend lots of time on. To suddenly see it disappear in the satellite images kind of really brings home how quickly these changes are.
Nowhere has climate change become more evident than the Arctic. Over the last 3 decades, it has been warming at twice the global rate. But this year, summer temperatures have been particularly intense.
So we've seen extensive melt across the Canadian Arctic, but also elsewhere in the Arctic. In northern Greenland, in the Norwegian Arctic, for example, all those regions have seen extensive glacier losses this year.
Given temperature trends, researchers expected the ice shelf to collapse, just not so soon, and not all at once. Had COVID-19 travel restrictions not been in place, the Ottawa team would have been camping on the ice shelf as it broke apart.
Little changes in temperature year over year can unleash a very big response and sudden response, as this event illustrates.
Another example of a powerful consequence that comes with a changing climate. Heather Yurex West, Global News, Calgary.
What is going on here? We explain a strange scene that's all laughs and no pants. Some big news from Britain. Palmerston is retiring. He's been the resident cat at Britain's Foreign Office for 4 years. His age is uncertain, but his ability to write a resignation letter is impressive. He says he wanted more time away from the limelight, and he signed it with 2 paw prints. Palmerston, who has more than 100,000 followers on Twitter, says he's done overhearing the conversations of foreign dignitaries. He's had a few diplomatic disputes with his neighbor, Larry, the chief mouser at 10 Downing Street. But Larry, being the bigger cat, is now wishing Palmerston well. There is another less dignified story from Berlin about a cheeky wild boar and a naked man. Now, don't worry, it's family friendly. The man, who was sunbathing nude, sprang into action when a wild boar snatched a bag holding his laptop and ran off, her piglets trailing behind. Naturism is not unusual in Germany, but boar chasing is less common. The man eventually got his laptop back, locals got a good laugh, and the whole thing proves Berlin is never boring. And that is Global National for this Friday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Here Canada is Fredericton, New Brunswick. I'm off for a little break now. Hope all of you get one too, and I'll see you back here soon. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.